sit here and I hope somebody will. There we go. There we go. Now it looks like we're live. So hopefully those people that YouTube seems to care about will actually get notifications. And if they don't care about you, then maybe you'll get it an hour late or a day late or a week late. Who knows? Who knows? Or not at all. So signing up or, clicking that little bell to get notifications isn't always going to work. Now, some people who have a problem getting notifications or seeing feed from their favorite channels in their feed have found that if they unsubscribe from a channel and resubscribe, that kind of helps everything out. I think there is something to be said about following too many channels. And so that is something you might want to look at to see if there's any channels you don't follow anymore that you're still subscribed to. That might help clean it up a little bit. So as usual, I try to come in here about 15 minutes early to give people time to pop in, to say hi, maybe even answer a question or two before I get started. Because once I get started, I'm terrible at paying attention to the chat. I mean, that's good and bad. I mean, I know some people, it's watching a live show where somebody's just sitting there staring at the chat can get really boring. But it does allow a breather and gives time for people to ask questions and such. But at the same time, if you're coming in now and you haven't heard this yet, one of the things I'm going to start doing and have already started doing is for those who don't like the live shows because they're too long and drawn out, they don't like the chit chat and the stuff that takes up time. What I'm going to be doing is taking the important parts of the show. After it's all done, I'll download it, take those parts. That way I can edit out all the unnecessary stuff. So to just get to the meat of the topics. Then I can also have the fun of adding photos and whatnot in there. So anyway, yes, here we are. Hello, everyone coming in. I'm not going to, I know some people like to read all the names. Just know I'm seeing those names. Not everybody likes to hear all the names read, but thank you. Hello, hello. And we're going to actually start on the topics at noon, since that's that's the scheduled time the show is supposed to start. Well, noon my time, which might be 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, or 3 o'clock if you're in the United States, your time, or middle of the night if you're on the other side of the world. So I forgot where I was going with that. See, this is why this is why I do pre-recorded videos, because I always have brain cramps, even with notes handy. I forget what I'm saying, and sometimes I forget to even read my notes, or I forget to put stuff in the notes. So I lost track of what I was saying. But right now it's just kind of idle chit chat until we can get into the meat of the topics at noon. I know I was talking about making the shorter clips and editing them and then uploading them so they'll publish usually maybe on a Wednesday afternoon. That way people who just want that because they don't like live shows, or they just simply can't make it to the live show, but they don't want to go through the whole hour and a half, however long it ends up being. I'm trying to shoot for an hour, or at least an hour and 15 minutes. Then, they can go watch that short one, or they can watch a replay. So if you're coming in here and watching the replay and you're like, why isn't she on the topic yet? Well, give it about another 10 minutes from this point. Hopefully I'll be on time. You can always skip ahead to about 15 minutes in from the start of the video to about that time, because I'm going to try to stick to a schedule like that to help keep us from going too crazy. That's the problem with live, is you can just get too crazy. Not that it's not fun. It's fun to chat and say hello to everyone. And everybody gets to see my imperfections and my mistakes and all that. So this is the real me. No matter how real you are in your pre-recorded videos, you're still just talking to a camera. I mean, I'm talking to a camera now, but the difference is I know you guys are actually there right now watching me, and it just makes a complete difference. And yeah, it's just a lot easier to be yourself. And you know what's funny? Some of you who are new, if you go back and watch hey T, if you go back and watch some of my very, very early videos, my very first ones, I was so sedate. I see those every now and then when I'm looking for something, and I go, oh, there's that video, and I have to get into it for some reason. And I'm like, man, that was so boring. Because I mean, that's just not me. I was just very, very sedate. And then when I started doing live shows back then, people were like, whoa, you're just not even the same person. It's like, well, yeah, because it's totally different talking to a camera. It's a camera. It's not a live thing. So anyway, so we got people from Kansas and California and Pennsylvania. See, around here, PA means Port Angeles, which is in Washington. It's only about an hour's drive away from us. But so sometimes I have to watch myself. So I'm assuming you mean Pennsylvania and not Port Angeles. And let's see, Missouri. People from all over. Let's see, do you enjoy live streams over the pre-recorded videos, or do you not have a preference? It really depends, Mary, on what I'm doing. The nice thing about the pre-recorded videos is because I do make mistakes, I do forget stuff, I do have brain cramps where I just stop and I'm staring off into space, or I get interrupted by dogs or husbands, or one husband. I only have one. And I can edit all that out. Sometimes Patrick's eating breakfast in the background and he ends up making a lot of noise. I have to stop and I'm like waiting. So yeah, I mean, that's nice for that. But for the live shows, you have to try to be a little more controlled. You got to have a specific time. But at the same time, I can just ramble and have fun. And yeah. And but I think it's also great because it gives people more options, because everybody has their different preferences of what they enjoy to watch. Some people like the shorts because they're very concise, to the point, and maybe that will lead them back to a full-length video I have, and those can be fun to put together. Some people like the live shows because they're more interactive, more real. And then other people just, they want it to be maybe not as short as a short, but concise, have all the information, the photos and all that. Whereas it is right now, I don't want to go through the OSB, I think it's called, like you used to do, and have to add all the pictures and stuff while I'm trying to do it live. But for the parts that I take out, I can do that then later. So, and then of course, if you start having a coughing fit because you got nodules on your vocal cords that you've had since you were at least, I've had them for at least 25 years. And lately they've been really bothering me. So last week's show, not only was I, recovering from a cold, yet another cold from the grandbabies, my vocal cords were thrashed, and they still are. And when they're like that and I'm talk, the more I talk, the worse it gets. And then I start having the coughing fit. And that's why I finally had to close it down, because they told me, we're done. We're done. You need to just stop talking. So, and usually after a rest, I can start talking again, but I have to take these little breaks. And that's the other thing about pre-recorded videos is if I have to, I can do one. And then if I need a break in between, because I got to shoot my videos. I only have a couple days a week I can do that. So I try to shoot 3 on Wednesdays and 2 on Sundays. But this week, things ended up being a little bit different. So I was actually able to get 2 of them shot on Friday so I could rest my vocal cords a little bit more for the live show today. So hopefully I can make it through. So we'll be starting on the topic soon. Let's see if I got any more questions. I'm interested in how to bake bread when there's no power. Yes. And hopefully I have the answers for you. But just know, too, that there should be, I think I put it in there. I can't see it right now. But in the description box below the video screen, I linked to a video I did, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 years ago, where I did the same idea, where I compiled a bunch of different ideas on things that you can use to cook and to bake with. And I think did I remember to write that one down? Okay, I did. But I got all the images in there too, where, like I said, I can't really add that here, though I'll add it to the clip that I take out. But I have a couple things I can show you, because I had Patrick go find me some stuff that wasn't too big that I could actually just hold it up and show you for just some ideas. And it should be fun. And what I'm hoping, yes, Brenda, thank you. Yes, thumbs up. We need the thumbs up. We need the thumbs up. And guess what? Even if you give me a thumbs down, that helps me too. Thank you. All your comments. And you know what? I think when you guys hit the little reaction thing at the bottom, which costs you nothing, but just a little click on the whatever comes up there. It's a, what do you get? You get the choice between a heart, a laughing face, a party thing, a wow face, and 100%. So yeah, I think those actually help. I think because it's interesting when I go back and look at the analytics, I can see where people were hitting those things more. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I don't know, but it might help. It might. Who knows? It is fun too. You get to make the little hearts and the laughing faces and whatnots just kind of fly up the screen there. So Heidi, I'm so excited to have caught a live show. Quick question. Do you sell a pattern to the skirt you make? No, but guess what? I have a playlist on making the skirt. So in that playlist, it's called the Patchwork Skirt playlist. And I've actually recently remastered the first 3 videos in the Patchwork Skirt making series. And the very, very first sewing video I did, which was making the solid skirt. And so you can watch those videos where I explain how to do it. And if I remember after I'm done here, I can't add links while I'm on here, but you can just look it up on my channel, Patchwork Skirt, and you should be able to pull up the whole series. And, you know, because I started with one just really simple for the patchwork skirt, really simple, then did another video showing more things like how to customize, how to better lay out the squares to just make the overall appearance look better, and how to put in pockets and so on. So, and I will be talking more about a little bit later. I got a couple more minutes before I get to the off-grid cooking, etc. But I'll be talking about the linen pants, breeches, knickers, bloomers, whatever you want to call them, and how I make them. Just kind of giving a rough overview on that. But yeah, so I don't have patterns to sell or to send you, but I have videos and they're free. And when you watch the videos, that helps me out and I make a little revenue off of it. So it's great. I remember when I bought that 50-cent sheet and I put up that video when my channel was so small at the time. I'm like, look, I made 50 cents on this video. Yay, it paid for itself. Making a skirt out of the 50-cent sheet they got at garage sale paid for itself. So that was pretty cool. It's kind of fun to see that. Watching from Louisiana, where the hurricane knocked out the power for weeks. I've been wondering, by the way, how some of you all are doing. Let's see. I'm excited to actually see someone cook a meal without electricity. Now, I'm not going to be showing that. I'm just going to be talking about it. I have lots of videos showing me doing these things, using a rocket stove, cooking on the wood stove, and more. Today, I'm not in my kitchen. This is my dance studio / martial arts studio. So I used to teach in here. So if you haven't been following me, or if you're new and you're just coming in here, I used to teach ballet and martial arts, and we built this room back in, I think it was 97. I was teaching before that in this was a much smaller area. It was half the size. But then when I retired from the teaching and I started my YouTube channel, we made some changes by like Patrick taking the old lower kitchen cabinets and putting them in here. And so now this is our buffet for when we have meals in here, because this is a great place to do dinners when you've got more than just a few people than in our little tiny dining room, that originally is with the house. We still eat there, just not that often. Okay, so it is now 12 p.m. my time, which means it is officially time to start. And you might hear my phone chiming here and there. That means Patrick is over at the property right now, and that's letting me know that somebody is in front of a camera. So I'm going to start off with this little thing that Patrick brought in that he had found not too long ago out in the shop, and kind of got it cleaned up. And so I haven't talked about this in a previous video before. I don't recall if I saw him use it. I've seen him use it. I don't recall. So this little thing is a little stove. I don't even know where or if you can find one just like this, but he got this when he was in the Cub Scouts. I was like, really? Man, this thing is old. So it's kind of cool because it's very compact. You open it up like so. He had to show me how to do this. you flip this thing out, and then you've got your little burner. You can see that your little burner's right there. And then it's got this, the knob. If I can get it out of here, this thing, where you adjust the heat, the flame. Let me get it together. It slips through this little hole and then onto there. So it looks like, why is it so hard to figure out where the camera is? Like that. And so then you cook on this right here. So that was really cool. But the nice thing about something like this is because it's so compact, you can take it camping. This is something that he was keeping, keeps in his rig. So, if he's going, because he's also heading down to our other piece of property south of town, which is, it takes about an hour to get there, and it's up the mountain, and no cell phone service, nothing like that. So having something to cook with. Wait a minute, he's leaving without his little stove. I don't think he'll need it, but you never know. So anyway, yeah, but he used to commute to work about 45 minutes, with hour and a half round trip. And so he always kept all that stuff in his little car that he had for commuting back and forth. And so, we kept a lot of stuff in there. So there's that. And then the nice thing about some of these smaller things is they can, they're small, they're usually not too expensive. And you can get all kinds of like propane and other types of gas stoves, like this one right here. You can get one smaller than this. I was kind of surprised this one was this big. I thought it was smaller, because you can get smaller ones than this. And I think we have a smaller one. And Patrick showed me that, you can get a valve like this that you can use to refill these smaller tanks instead of constantly buying these little tanks. If you have larger tanks, like, 5, 10, 20 gallon tanks for propane, then you can get an adapter like this and then refill it from one of those, because it can get expensive if you're constantly having to buy these little things like that. They don't like to tell you about that. And they might even tell you, no, don't do it. It's scary. It's bad. Well, of course they're going to tell you that, because they make money every time you buy one of those little containers. So there's a couple of options that are, that can be something you can just put away. It can be just for emergencies only. And also things that you can, have compact for keeping in a rig. And I know there's like little stoves, like some people might be sharing stuff. Yes, a propane camping gas stove. We have like 2 or 3 of those, the kinds that are about this big with 2 burners. It's another option. And I might have to rotate my computer a little bit so I can show you one of my other options, but I'll get to that in a minute. What was I going to say? I got distracted because I saw the comment, because that was one of the points. Like you can just kind of fabricate something really small with a cotton ball and alcohol and whatever. There's all kinds of little tiny stoves you can make. However, things like that aren't, like this and that, they're not the best thing to use for like making bread. So that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. And I really wish I could put more photos in here, but there's a lot of things you can do on top of a wood stove if you already have a wood stove. Like I will make biscuits and certain things, flatbreads and stuff like that. But just putting it directly on top of, I'm not talking about a cook stove. I mean, obviously a cook stove, because you're going to have the oven portion of it where you can stick your cookies, your cinnamon rolls, your pies, your breads, and they'll brown on top. But you can't really do that same thing on top of a wood stove unless you're going to flip it like I do with the biscuits. You can do pancakes. Obviously, you're going to flip those anyway. All that kind of stuff's simple. But I have a video specifically on this, and I've covered it a few times. And I think I might have also linked down below to my off-grid kitchen, which, setup, which is in our living room, right on the other side of this wall. So, and that's where through the winter, I do most of my cooking and baking, coffee making, tea making, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And a few years ago, I bought just a stainless steel, you just set it on top of the wood stove, and it's a Winterwell stovetop oven. It takes a really long time, and you have to have that fire just blazing hot for it to get hot enough to really brown the things on top, but it does work, especially if you can like do like what I did and take an old cake pan I don't use to bake in. And I prop the bread pan up on top of that, and that gets it closer to the top. And then that actually helps it brown better. Some people have done really well. You can use Dutch ovens, the kind that are made with the lid that is a little bit concave, so you can pile coals on top. Just a one with a rounded top where you can't put the coals on top is not going to work so well. I've tried it, but if you can have some kind of heat source coming down on top, then you can get your things to brown. So that can be using in like an open fire on your wood stove, in your wood stove, etc. As long as you put some coals on top. So I keep saying I'm going to get a cast iron Dutch oven like that. My cast iron Dutch oven is a little smaller and has a rounded top. And I thought, well, I could just flip the lid over, but the problem is there's a handle on the lid and it would kind of get in the way of the bread. So that could be problematic. Now, so let's come back to the wood stove for just a little bit. Though I don't like to focus on the wood stove too awful much because not everybody can afford the cost of a wood stove or the space for a wood stove. It doesn't matter if it's one like mine, which is just a standard wood stove for heating with a nice big wide flat top that I use for cooking on, because I don't have a place for a cook stove. We had to make the most out of what we had, of the space we had and the area we had. So that's why we went with that, not a cook stove, because we wouldn't have been able to fit one in that area. And but the nice thing is if you can afford the space and the investment for a wood stove, you can use it for so many, many things. And I think I talked about this last week or the week before in my first episode. This is episode 3, by the way. But you can not only use it for cooking and doing some baking on, depending on what other apparatuses you have to go with it. You can use it for heating water to wash dishes or anything else. You can use it for drying your laundry. You can use it for dehydrating foods. It is a multi-purpose thing that can serve you so many ways. That's why I think when it comes to wise investments into being a little more self-sufficient and ready for things that may arise, a wood stove is probably, to me personally, it's right up there at the top of one of the number one things when we're talking about more expensive things to invest in. Now, let's talk about a few more cheaper ideas that also take up less space, and that would be a rocket stove. That's something I haven't done videos on in a long time. I keep saying, oh, this is going to be the summer. I pull out my rocket stove, but my summers get so busy or something else is going on, and I forget. I kept meaning to do that this year, but I only do it in the summer. But a rocket stove is small. Ours, you can make your own out of bricks, patio blocks, whatever you've got. You probably can just find salvage material and build your own. But the whole idea is you have a really small fire, and you can just use I would use like dried marshmallow stalks from my garden, echinacea stalks, or anything like that. If you got tree cones of any kind, you can throw those in there. It can be just little bitty sticks. It doesn't take much, but the drawback is you have to keep feeding it all the time. But I have actually done a lot of cooking on that in the past, cooking all kinds of different things on my rocket stove. And it's a fun thing to do. And I'm sorry, my son's dog is here and she's barking her head off. Grr, I knew this was going to happen. I hope that's not too distracting because I don't want to get up and leave and go try to quiet them down. Who knows what they're barking out? Somebody's probably walking by outside. All it takes is one of them to bark and the other one goes ballistic. So the rocket stove, you can look into that. You can find videos on making your own rocket stove. Again, it can be really cheap. We bought ours. I don't even think they make it anymore, but it used to be the one I got, I think it's called Stove Tech. And I believe it was made in Oregon. And I loved it. I can just pick it up and carry it anywhere, which is a nice thing about that, where if you're going to build one, typically you're going to build it in a place where you're going to want it to stay for a while. It's not going to be as portable. But yeah, you can just look on my channel for a rocket stove and you should find some videos, at least a couple, on me cooking on a rocket stove. In fact, one of my oldest videos very, very, one of my very first. I spent the whole day cooking on the rocket stove. That was breakfast. I made lasagna. I think it was lasagna. No, it was enchiladas. I could, so I did the tortillas. I made the tortillas from scratch. I cooked them on the rocket stove. Then later when I got the whole lasagna together, I made the sauce on the rocket stove. Got the lasagna, enchiladas, and then I baked them on top of there. So basically just covering it and then, letting it heat up on there. And that worked out pretty good. That's right. I did it in a enamelware pan. It had its own lid. So, yeah. Yes. A lot of times you can find old cook stoves or regular wood stoves on places like, I always say, look at Facebook Market if you have Facebook. And the nice thing about Facebook Market is you're more likely to find something that's closer to you where you don't have to drive so far or pay a whole bunch of money to have it shipped to you. And you're talking wood stoves, that's expensive. So we managed to get a smaller freestanding wood stove for our off-grid piece, because Patrick's always shopping for stuff like that. So we got one of those. He also got a little small propane oven / stove, like you would have maybe in a trailer, in a camp trailer, so that it's currently in our little cabin out there at the piece of property we have down the road. That if you've seen any videos on that, you'll see it's just a cute little cabin that came with it when we got it. So right now it's where it's sitting, and who knows, it might stay there. It might, we might do something else with that as well. So now I'm going to turn my computer a little bit. Hopefully you'll be able to see it. You'll only be able to see the top of it right there with a doll. As this lady made this doll for me. It's me, but right there is a Camp Chef camp oven with a stove top. I've never used the stove top, but I have used the oven. So again, that's something that runs off propane, and I have it over there. So it's next to the sliding glass door. That way, if I do need to use this, I need to fall back on this, I can just open that sliding glass door, and then that's where I'm going to get my ventilation. Or even if I really need to, I can just stick it out on the deck. So, when you're using stuff like that, ventilation is important. So just, that's why I have that over there. Now let me, I'll try to see if I can see any more ideas here. I had my carport built in such a way that I feel safe cooking in it. Very good. During the many outages we have in Louisiana, it usually is raining a lot when we lose power. Same, because we lose power during the wintertime, and that's when we get most of our rain. We get an average of 120 to 144 inches of rain every year, but most of that happens like late fall through the winter to early spring. So about 6 months of the years where we get most of it. And it can be pretty torrential, and we don't have our back deck covered, and it's a very frustrating story why we never got that done, because everything doesn't line up. Patrick has tried to do the math so many times, because we've got two different structures. We got our house. So you see our house, we got a shop, and then the deck is in this area, where the shop and the house, there's actually a walkway between the house and the shop. So there's that too. And the roof lines don't match up. And some of that was, even though we set exactly the pitch we wanted when we rebuilt this room, the contractor just did whatever the heck he wanted. He didn't want the steeper pitch because that would have made more work for him. And it was too late when, they're putting in the trusses. I mean, that was the one thing they did quickly. Oh, let's get these trusses in before Patrick gets home and realizes that this is a different pitch. So it was just like, really? And we needed to get this room done so I could have it ready when I started my dance classes up again in the fall. So that was really frustrating. But anyway, because of all this weirdness, there's all this stuff to work around. We couldn't cover our walkway the way we'd planned. And then the deck, it's frustrating. But having a covered area, especially when you live in a very rainy area, or maybe live in a very sunny, hot area and you need shade, that's going to be quite helpful when it comes to having anything outside that you can cook or bake in. And then I'm talking mostly about stuff I already have. So let me see, or I have used. So I showed you the mini stoves. I talked about the camp stove, the rocket stove, the wood stove, open fire, the camp oven, the wood stove oven, and then there's the solar oven. Now, around here, that doesn't get used that much, especially now. When I first got it, I used a lot more than I do now. But now that my whole back garden uh, is full of chickens and garden, my backyard, and my back deck is during the sunniest part of the year where we're getting enough sun to use a solar oven. I only get a few days of that, and then the grapevines, they shade so much of my deck now that I usually don't get as many hours as I once used to do. But it is nice to have. But that's what you'll see in the thumbnail to this video is that old solar oven, which is not available anymore. I bought it many years ago. It's a Solarvore. But there's many different types of solar ovens to suit different people's lifestyles, small ones, big ones, so on and so forth. We hear a lot of good things about the All-American, but there's many, many more. And I actually compiled a few years ago some information on solar ovens, including a couple of different sites that showed you how to build your own out of just basically trash, cardboard, an old frame, picture frame with the glass in it that can be your top. Just like super, super cheap and easy to do. And maybe some stove black to paint the inside. So you got that really heating up on the inside. That's why your solar ovens are either going to be shiny on the inside to reflect the heat, or they're going to be black to absorb the heat from the sun and, really heat it up inside that oven. So solar oven is, especially if you live in a place that's sunny, that gets a lot of sun, especially if it gets sun all year round. It's a great idea. So go look up that video because I compiled a whole bunch of different ideas and read the reviews and what got the highest reviews on the different solar ovens that are available out there, and then provided links to at least most of them, if not all of them. Just not mine because they're not available anymore. So I'm looking for anything that, see, no matter what you use, we need to practice cooking with it before emergencies happen. Absolutely. And that's something I always try to say. And that's why with the rocket stove, I mean, I get excited, the rocket stove, this oven I showed you back here, the little oven for on top of my stove, even though it's not my favorite thing to use, I have practiced with it a few times. So I could, can I at least do biscuits and a loaf of bread in here and be happy with it? And yes, I can. And now that I've got my tricks figured out, I'll know what to do if I don't have enough solar power to run my toaster oven for baking bread, or, whatever, it's a power outage too. So, because this is about in case of a power outage. Then the other thing I wanted to share with you, and this is kind of a funny thing, and I don't have a picture of it. I can't find it anyway. I thought I took a picture years ago and put it on Facebook, but who knows? Who knows what happened to that picture? But it was before we had all these other things, and before we had the wood stove that we have now that you can actually heat stuff up on. Or maybe, you know what it was? We had the wood stove, but it was at the time of the year where we didn't have fires going. And so you're not going to go build the fire just to heat Pat his coffee up in the morning before he goes to work. And so I'm like, okay, what can I do? The power's out yet again, because that's what happens here all the time. Anyway, I found I don't know if you guys, and I know I talk about this in a couple of their videos. If you remember those turkey, what are they called? Beer can chicken things. They're just a simple little stand that's kind of got a tubular shape here. It's just stainless steel, and it's wider at the bottom. You put a beer can, that you've dumped or drank half the beer out of, you stick that in there, you put your chicken over the top, and then you barbecue it, and it turns out really good. We use those. We bought a couple of those, and that was kind of a novel thing, and it was fun, and it does make some pretty tasty chicken. However, that thing worked pretty good also for heating up his coffee. So I poured the coffee in, that we'd had made the night before, into a pot, set it on top of that thing, and then I set candles under it to heat it up. And that worked really good. It worked. It was just enough to be able to heat the coffee. You could do the same thing with soup or whatever. So any kind of thing that you could fabricate, some kind of stand, and you've got your candles, just light a candle or two or three or whatever, and put that under there, and just, it's going to take longer, especially the higher that little stainless steel thing is, or whatever it is you're creating. It'd be best if it was stainless steel. The higher up it is, so the farther up the pot or whatever is sitting from the heat, the longer it's going to take. But it still works in a pinch. It works. So let's see. Now, let me see if I got any more. Just used our butane burner to heat up food I had pre-cooked before Hurricane Helene here in Florida. I also made plenty of ice ahead of time. Very good. Very smart. And I had food and ice in a cooler while power was out. Now, you remember a couple weeks ago in my first episode where I was talking about energy saving ideas, where I was talking about so if you order food from places like Misfits Market, Butcher Box, as your standard, if you're ordering and you're getting cold items, you're going to get some kind of ice pack. Well, let me scratch the Butcher Box one, because they always send dry ice instead. So it's usually gone or almost gone by the time we get it. But those dogs are driving me bananas. I might have to go quiet them down. Sometimes once they get going, they just won't stop. But I'm wondering now if somebody's here, because I should be alone right now. I want to finish this thought, but I save as many of those packs, the little gel cold packs, as I can. And I put them in the freezer to take up space, so that I have, it's going to save more energy while we have power, be it solar, be it public, or when we don't have power, that's going to help keep things cold. So I was talking about that, but I can also take those packs out and put them in a cooler and use them in other ways. I'm sorry, you guys chat. I'm going to be right back. I'm going to go deal with some lippy dogs. They knew they were wrong. I didn't have to say anything. They just heard me coming and they ran into the crate. Naughty, naughty. They were barking at absolutely nothing. Little dogs. Grr. So, okay. Now, some other ideas that we don't have. Something I would like to do, especially on maybe one of our off-grid pieces. Oh, yeah. And don't forget your barbecuer. I always forget that one, because it's like everybody has a barbecuer, so you don't think about it. But you can do a lot of stuff on a barbecuer. You can fry potatoes. You can obviously cook steaks. You can heat up. You can make any kind of casserole in there. If you treat it like an oven, you're just going to turn the heat way down. Anything. You can do anything in a barbecue. So if you have a barbecue, I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people have a barbecuer. And, there's always that option. So then the other thing I would really like to have is one of those clay or brick ovens that you can build. Like a lot of people will get like a pizza oven or build a pizza oven. But I think I've seen people build a similar idea and have that be not just for pizza, but anything that you want to bake in. That obviously would be something you would do outside. So hello all who are just coming in. Good to see you. So if you're missing some of the stuff, keep in mind, you can go back to the beginning, but if you don't want to hear the idle chit chat, I start 15 minutes early to give people time to get notifications and come in, and we just talk about whatever. But if you want to skip right to the topic, just move it forward about 15 minutes, and that's about where I should have started talking about the off-grid cooking options. And let's see, I want to make sure I covered everything. Okay, and that was it as far as some ideas. I know I'm forgetting some stuff, but there's, it's just like anything else. A lot of times it's learning how to just make the most of what you already have on hand. You don't have to go out and buy fancy stuff, especially if you're looking at something for an emergency situation. It's like Patrick finding that old stove. And if you're just coming in, this cool stove that just folds up into this little bitty box that he got when he was in Cub Scouts. So, and you can do all kinds of stuff on that little stove. And it either can be really, really cheap or something you can fabricate yourself. And I'm sure some of you remember, I actually haven't seen anything more about this since Cat's Cradle. She got one years ago. And anyone who knows who she is, she hasn't done videos. Once in a very rare occasion, she might put a video out, but I used to follow her back before I started my channel. And she had one of those, I cannot remember the name of it, but it was a tea light oven. So you had to have like a ton of these tea lights to put in there. And she got that thing and was trying it out. But with that same idea, you know, tea lights, as remember how I was talking about candles? You can find candles all day long at almost every single garage sale. Tea lights are the same. They're a candle, but you can, I have found piles and piles of tea lights, never once lit at garage sales. So you could basically fabricate your own little oven using those tea lights and just having something that you could prop above that. Just like I was talking about with the beer can chicken holder thing, whatever that crazy thing was called. So sometimes, an emergency, remember, what is the saying? What is the old adage that necessity is the mother of invention? And that's how people come up with all these great ideas is they were in a pinch. Well, a lot of people anyway. It's like you need something, you're going to figure out a way to make it work. So and this isn't about cooking or baking, but years ago, when we first got our first little camp trailer we bought used, and it was small, and it was just when the kids were young, and Patrick, trying to make the most of whatever was around us, he was able to make it so that we could shower using the creek water. Whatever, we'd always try to find a creek that we could park next to. We'd throw a hose down in there, and he would use the pump in the trailer itself and pump the water up from the creek. And then we could have hot showers using that without even having to keep our water tanks full because, it costs more fuel to keep the water tanks full. I'm not sure that we kept water in the tanks or not, just in case. It would have made sense to, but I also know we were trying to be very, very frugal, because it costs more in fuel just to drive pull a camp trailer around in the first place. But that was always a fun thing. So yeah, it was a little work. Yeah, and in fact, one year the water was we couldn't get quite close enough, so the water was so far down the bank that one of us, while the other one was taking a shower, Patrick took like an old milk jug or something and cut the bottom, the wide end out, and then hooked the hose up to that milk jug. So while one of us was showering, the other one was down in the creek scooping up water and holding it up so it would at least gain better momentum before it went down and then back up the hill because the pump wasn't quite strong enough to pull it up that hill. So again, it's just about being creative with what you have on hand. You can do so much just thinking about you. So again, you don't have to run out and buy a camp oven like you saw over here. I'll turn that camera. You won't be able to see much of it anyway because it's kind of on the other side of that cabinet, that counter. You can see the top of it. So the camp oven, and like I said, it's got burners on top. You don't have to run out and buy stuff like that. You don't even have to run out and buy a wood stove. It's nice to have, though. It's nice to have those things. But try to think of ways that you can, especially compactly, create or have something that you need in a case of emergency. So I have a video series, by the way, on what is it? What do I call it? On the go preparedness. I changed the name of it so many times as I kept adding videos to it. I finally decided after I changed it so many times, I thought on the go preparedness makes sense because originally it was just going to be about my purse, the things I carry in my purse, starting with just a few things and building up from there. But one of the things that I keep in my purse that is just a Sawyer water filter. Have I ever needed to use it? No, but it's there. You never know if you're going to be on the road. You're going to get stuck in traffic. You're going to get stuck in the middle of a snowstorm that just came up out of nowhere. I don't know if you guys remember years ago in Atlanta, what happened there. And there was just cars and cars and cars, people stuck in their cars for days because of that. And I wonder how many of those people had things like a little stove and maybe some food rations of some kind and ways to stay warm and a water purifier. Of course, you still have to have water. You have to have access to water to be able to use that. So, obviously having water bottles of some kind on hand, which we typically have stainless steel water bottles. And then I usually add a little bit of the substance that shall not be named because that could get me in trouble, whose the the initials are C and S, a certain precious metal that is suspended in liquid. Okay. So what I do is take a little bit of that and add it to the water bottle in the stainless steel bottle and keep that in the rig. And sometimes it'll sit out there for years and we forget about it, but it's there in case of emergency. It's like, I need to remember to bring it in and change it out, put some fresh water in. But every time I've tried it, no matter how long it sat out there in the summer heat, it always tasted just as fresh as it did when I put it in there. So that particular substance will help keep it from growing algae or anything like that. But of course, if it's dark, it's kept in a dark container, that's going to prevent that. And yeah, it was great. It worked great. So yeah. Now you can talk about silver all day long, buying silver, silver, silver. But when you start talking about it in its liquid form, it can get you in trouble because it's taboo. It's scary, scary. Scary, bad, scary. Not really, but some people like us to believe it is. So I see, I saw some Berkey replacement filters are silver infused. Yeah, I don't think ours are. The most recent ones are charcoal, the charcoal ones. But yeah, it's because that kills bacteria. Hello. So anyway, that's why you can use it for so many things. That's why I add it to my homemade mascara and several other things. See, how much of the CS would you put in 5 gallons of water? In 5 gallons? Maybe a half cup to a cup, depending. I'm just guessing. I don't have any measurements. I just do stuff. But what I will say is I do not add it to you might see my video that came out, I think on Friday on the toxic rainwater. Ooh, scary. Another scary thing. I know some people were talking about adding it to the water that they store, which is fine. There's a reason why I don't do that. It's a good idea for storing, if you think it's going to take a while, but because I use that same water for fermenting and I'm always rotating through it, I don't add that to it because it can affect your ferment. So if you're making homemade wine, homemade mead, you're making kimchi, sauerkraut, fermented eggs, whatever it is, and you're using that water with that particular substances in it, and it's killing the good bacteria, very light, it could possibly be doing that, then it might affect your ferment. I can't say for certain because I've never tried it. I just play it on the safe side and don't. But if I had like jugs of water that I was going to keep in a place that I know is just kind of hidden away, not something I normally rotate through, then yeah, I think to a gallon, I would probably add about a quarter cup. So just, again, I'm just blurting out an amount because I rarely ever measure anything. I just go, oh, that looks good. That's the way I do it. So, Lori, I'm sorry about your pain. I do have videos on like a homemade muscle rub, but that can take a while to make. I've got videos on homemade pain relievers, or this is all natural stuff. Some of that stuff you might be able to do for yourself right away. And I do recommend, if you know what is causing it, it could be a pinched nerve, or some kind of injury. I don't know what's going on there. But if it is an injury and heat, I always say heat. Now people say ice take down swelling, but the purpose of the swelling, by the way, is because the blood is rushing in there to heal. And the heat is going to help that blood flow. So heat is a good thing, especially if you can do any kind of soak to wherever the actual injury is. Like when the last thing I did was when I broke my toe, my big toe. And so I was doing soaks. I mean, I didn't know what was wrong with it because I'm like, how it can't be a broken toe. It can't be a broken toe. And then finally it dawned on me, it is a broken toe. And it wasn't because it was one thing. It was because it was a repeated action I kept doing. And that's when it finally dawned on me somewhere along the way it broke. I mean, I hurt so bad. And once I figured out what was going on, I'm like, oh, I broke my big toe. I've never broke my big toe before. This is a new one. So I did a soak of hottest water I could stand with Epsom salts. Obviously, you could also use the magnesium flakes. I think I might have been using those too, but either one. And then I would put in my homegrown herbs. And if they're coming in fresh, I use those. Specifically comfrey and arnica. I'd throw in there and basically make a tea out of it and then soak my foot in that. And I was doing that and just huge change. Huge. I mean, it healed it up so quick. So if it's any kind of injury that's like that or a pulled muscle, those things can be very helpful. You can even, let's see, you got anything that can replace a muscle relaxer? Absolutely. One of the best ones is just valerian root, but it's very powerful. Sometimes you can use valerian leaf. I have my own recipe for a muscle relaxer. It also helps with sleep. I've got a video on there. I can't link you directly to it right now. I could, but it's going to take me too much time and fussing around to try to get that and link you to it. But you can just do a search on my channel or if you don't know if you're on a smart device and you can't do the search right on the channel, just put Rain Country muscle relaxer. And I have a couple videos. One's really old. Look for the newer one because the recipe's better and the picture and everything's just better anyway. But that involves using valerian root. I'm also making another one that is straight right now. I've got it infusing just straight valerian root. And this is mostly for helping Patrick to sleep. But valerian is not only great for sleep and for pain, I would use it because my muscles, when I get super stressed out, my shoulders, I tend to do this a lot and my shoulders would ache and then the muscles would get tight. Excuse me. And when I take that, it doesn't take very long and they just relax. So at least that's what works for me. So I can't, I can tell you what works for me. I can't tell you what's going to work best for you. You can try it. But if you have, again, like with anything, start small. If you have any kind of negative reaction, stop taking it and look for something else. I also have, a video on herbs and more for anti-anxiety, that if that's what's causing the muscle pain or the tension, that might help. I don't know if I know I have another one that's on herbs and more for joints, tendons, ligaments, and maybe muscle health too. I don't know, but they're in there. They're in my channel. So I do want to talk a little bit about, yes, I've heard of Barbara O'Neill. I personally don't have time to watch a lot of those channels. I heard a lot of good things about her. I don't have time. I have so many irons in the fire. And when it comes to natural remedies, I like to do my own personal research. And she might pop up in my research and I might watch some of her stuff. But other than that, I don't have time to play a lot of other people's videos. It's more, I like to, when I look up information for anything, I never just get it from one source. Like I wouldn't just trust me for information because I'm going to share with you what works for me or what I know the most about, but it's not everything. And just like there's no doctor out there, medical physician, that knows everything about every ailment and how to cure that, even if they know a lot about an ailment, it doesn't mean they're going to know how to cure that ailment in you or to help you with it, because you may be very different than the 10, 50 other patients they had with the same ailment. So the same thing applies to herbs. No one herbalist can have all of that information here because there's so much to learn. And even if they do, it's accessing it. That's usually me. It's like somebody asked me a question. It's like beep, boop, beep, 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 boop, 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 boop. Okay, I know it's there somewhere, but my brain is not accessing it. So, but that's why I compile the information from so many different sources. I use the NIH. I use natural-based websites. I use mostly I'm looking at written information when I'm doing this rather than video information. and as many different sources and types of sources as I can, so I can get a very well-rounded information from all of the above. So I want to talk, before I forget and before my vocal cords say I'm done, because I can feel it's getting close. I haven't started coughing yet, but I can feel them starting to heat up, which means they're starting to swell and they're starting to say that I'm done. So I got a question. I've been getting a lot of questions since my linen video. I was talking about making the skirts. Right now I'm wearing one of my black skirts made from linen, and love it so much. But with that, I also make long underpants, knickers, bloomers, breeches, whatever you want to call them. They're not little short things. I actually make mine go clear down to my ankles. That's for several reasons. Some of that is, a lot of it for me is modesty, because a lot of times I'm picking up my skirts and, especially when I'm going out, I want to make sure I'm covered. But also in the wintertime, it's going to keep me warmer. And as such, I like to add a little, if you can see this here, let me get it in the camera. I put a little bit of elastic at the bottom of them so that when I'm walking around, because I always make them kind of longish, when I'm walking around, sorry, bump, 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 jiggle, jiggle, they're not going to fall down and get in the mud and the chicken poop and whatnot, or just get in my way generally. Now, I don't have a pattern for these specifically, but I have a pattern for homemade pajama bottoms. That's super simple, but that's with the drawstring. So the difference with the ones I wear under my skirt is I put a very loose elastic waistband inside the casing. So I don't do the buttonhole. I just fold it over, make my casing, leaving an opening to put the elastic in there nice and loose so it can sit lower on my hips and not hit where the drawstring is on my skirt. And then put the elastic in the bottom. Whereas my pajama bottoms, I don't put the elastic on the bottom. I'd hate that in my pajama bottoms. I want them loose and flowy. So I use the same pattern, just adding the elastic instead of the drawstring, and then the elastic on the legs. So that's how I do it. So if you go find the pajama bottoms video where I'm using the flannel, that's all you got to do. That's my video. And people were also asking me about the top, the linen top. It's like one of the simplest things ever. I have a video showing me using a t-shirt fabric, making the same type of shirt, but because the linen isn't as stretchy as like a t-shirt material, I made it much looser. So, but it's basically just, all you need is 2 squares of fabric, and as loose as you want it, as long as you want it, you stitch them here, you stitch them here. And then for the linen, I did kind of cut a rounded neck and then hemmed around it. So because it doesn't stretch, so I got to be able to pull it over my head. So you might want to consider doing that. And just whatever works for you. It's like super simple. It's like easy to make a shirt like that. And that's just, you're going to end up with cap sleeves. And the looser you make the shirt, the farther down the cap sleeves are going to go. So you can add sleeves. I have a video on making a sleeve that, comes up snug, but that's also with stretch knit. But you can just sew a very basic sleeve on there however you want. It's super easy. So yes. Now, what are a couple other questions? Oh, I wanted to remind everybody, because I was going to say this in last week's video, but that was right when I started coughing and hacking and my throat was just itching so bad I thought I was going to die. The interview with Luca Baffy from the Life podcast, just a warning, if you're interested in watching it, because of the nature of the podcast and his show is very, very heavily about my faith. You may or may not be interested in it. I do talk about a few other things. I talk about health, and I talk about whatever. I can't remember all the questions because it's 2 hours long. And that's even after he cut some of the excess stuff out. We had a nice chat. We had a really nice chat. I enjoyed talking to him. So if you haven't seen that, and I don't know that I linked it down below, but I'll try to come back and link it. But in tomorrow's This and That video, I put the link in there. And I think in last Monday's video, I put the link in that too. If you'd like to watch it, it'd be something you just turn on and listen to. Because even though you can see, you can also listen to it on the Apple podcast because it's on the Apple podcast. So if that's something when you're working and you just turn, because I listen to a lot of those interviews when I'm working around the house, but sometimes Patrick and I will sit down and watch them on YouTube together. So there's some really good ones I highly recommend. And that was one of the things I meant to talk about in the interview. And he had stopped recording when I remember. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot I was going to say this and that. But there's a lot if you like that, there's a lot of great interviews for ladies in particular. I recommend Amy Kay's interview and the one, the Taurus sisters, she does the magazine and, now I forgot her name again, Christy Jordan. So for the ladies, really recommend that one. There's a lot of other really great ones with men. I'm not going to remember them all because there's so many good ones out there. There's an interview with Zach from An American Homestead and David Wilbur. Some of you might know who he is. A lot of really great interviews. But yeah, those two at least I do recommend that you ladies watch. But there's so many more. I know I'm forgetting. Anyway, there was that. And then let me see if there was one more question I wanted to cover. I know in tomorrow's video, I do talk about the washing linens. So you can watch this and that video for that part. How I watch. Yeah, Constance. Yes. Constance from Cosmopolitan Cornbread. Her interview was excellent as well. I loved her interview. I've listened to it like 3 times. I listened to it when it first came out, then I listened to it again, and then I made sure that Patrick sat down and listened to it with me because it was also very good. We're all going to have our slight little differences, but that's kind of cool because we learn a little bit more from each other and get some different insight. And I like that. It's just like anything else, just like homesteading and herbs and, different ideas for cooking off grid. We can get so many different ideas just by listening to each other, which is why I'm hoping people keep throwing some great comments in there because I do have the chat so it replays. And a lot of times that might be where I see your comments if I missed them during the show. Oh, you can go, Gloria, you can see my skirts in all kinds of different videos. But yeah, it's my skirt. And you can see right there's one of my tassels right there. I got 2 in the front. I sew loops between the first and second tier, and then in the 2 in the front, 2 in the back, and then I just hook my tassels directly onto that. And if you're wondering what on earth is that all about, because I had people asking me, I have a video on that. Just keep in mind, it's for the weirdest thing. That video of all of my faith-based videos made people very, very angry. All I was doing was answering questions and showing people something. I like wearing them. And if you want to know why I wear them, I explain it in that video. But it's funny that one got so much hate, but the one that I did before that on my faith journey, the next steps, that one didn't make a bunch of people mad. I don't know why. It was the weirdest thing. How mad some people got. I'm like, you're getting mad at me for wearing the father's version of a WWJD bracelet that was so big about 20, 30 years ago. Why is it such a big deal to you? Why are you getting so mad? I don't know. People are funny, but whatever. People are always going to find a reason to be mad about something anyway. No, I've never made a sarsaparilla tincture. I have made homemade root beer before. It fermented so that it was fizzy in that way because it was fermented. And let's see. Excuse me. Love when you answer questions. Good. I like wearing skirts when I'm not working. I wear skirts all the time. It's just me. And again, this is another issue that gets people mad because I've never said ever that everyone should wear skirts. Or obviously not everyone, but every woman should wear skirts. I've never said that. I've just shared this. I wear skirts all the time in everything that I do, except for at night when I'm sleeping, I wear my PJs. And I got flack for that too from somebody because I didn't wear a nightgown. Serious? But then I get flack on the other side. It's like, well, I don't like skirts. Well, don't wear skirts. If you don't like skirts, don't wear them. Just wear whatever's right for you. I'm going to wear what's right for me, what's comfortable, what suits my lifestyle. But my skirts are very long. They're very full. That's why I can pick this up and hold it way out here up over my head because it's very full. That makes it easy for me to work with. For some people may find it harder to work with it that way, but it gives me lots of range of motion because I'll do leg lifts and stuff like that a lot of times during the day. I want to have that range of motion, but it also gives me, because my skirts are long, I can pick my skirt up easily, throw it over my skirt, even tuck it under my arm like this if I don't want to make sure I'm not tromping on it in the mud when I'm out taking care of my chickens or whatever, because this time of year, our rains have returned, so it's really muddy out there. And the chickens and the dogs make it muddy-er. So yeah, it's just what works for me. I love my skirts. I wear them all day long. And I have some that I make specifically for work skirts, so I don't care, like my solid black ones, so I don't care if they get stained or whatever, because, well, that's what they're for. They're for working in. And then I have some I make for dressing up. But I make them all the same style, as far as the fullness of them, because it's what suits me and I'm comfortable. But it's just a matter of choice. Nobody should get mad. I'm confused. You did interviews with all you mentioned? No. I did interview with the Life podcast, Luca Baffy. Okay. The other interviews he has on his channel and on his other sites where he has these interviews, I was recommending other interviews to go listen to of other people that he did. So he did an interview with David Wilbur. He did an interview with John, I can't think of his name, from 119 Ministries. He did an interview. He just did a really, really great one with a guy that I can't even think of his name because I'd never heard of him before, but that one just came out I think yesterday or the day before. Excellent. He was just so solid and logical and not, it was a good one. I'll say that. I agreed with pretty much, I would say maybe 95 to 99% of what he said. My only thing is just, I could bring it up because it has to do with politics, but at any rate, great guy, great interview. And then Constance from Cosmopolitan Cornbread and Christy Jordan and Amy Kay from Tour Sisters. Great interviews. I didn't interview with them. They were separate interviews. So I hope that's clear. I can understand the confusion, especially when I'm talking so fast. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, people are funny about the craziest things. You would be amazed at the things that people choose to be mad about. I've kind of come to the conclusion that, I think some people are just happier when they can have an excuse to be mad at somebody about something, and have something to complain about. And the more public you are, the more you see it, only because you're more public. And so the more subscribers I get, or the more, it's not really so much the more subscribers I get, but the more views I'm getting at the time. So I can tell when I'm getting tons of views from all kinds of people, because that's when the hate comes. That's usually when I get most of the hate, is from, oh, who's this person? And now somebody just randomly, some of them are just fly-by shooters. That's all they are. They just, oh, look, somebody else I can be mean to. I'm just a troll, and I don't really even care what they're talking about or know them. So I'm just going to do this. Okay, yeah, delete. But some people are loyal followers that just get mad for absolutely no reason. It's just the silliest thing. But I don't tell people how to dress. I don't tell people how to exercise their faith. I just share what I do. I don't even tell people the best way they should make a tincture or the best kind to make, because it's all going to be up to the person and what they can handle. I mean, my stomach wasn't feeling all that great last night, and I thought about taking a tincture, and I'm like, no, because I'm just like, no, I don't think I can handle that today. So, maybe a tea, but not a tincture. Sometimes, most of the time I don't mind them, but sometimes not today. It's just too gross. Because not all of them taste all that great. Yeah, some people hear what they want to hear. Absolutely. And some people really do want to be mad. And so you can do a video or do a post. And I know most of you know this, because even if you don't have a YouTube channel, you're probably out on social media somewhere, and you just post something that you think is positive and fun or whatever. And somebody will find a reason to get mad about it. It is dumb. Why are these people wasting their time? Like, where did you even come from? I mean, I know we went to school together, like, 30 some odd years ago, 40 years ago, whatever it was. I didn't even realize we were friends on Facebook. I forgot because I haven't seen you say anything on any of my posts. Now that I said something that you don't like, here you are coming out of the woodwork like some kind of cockroach. It's weird. Sometimes I just have to laugh and shake my head. Does castor oil go bad? I've actually had this question. Maybe it was you, but another question recently, and I honestly do not know. I know it's never gone bad for me, but you also have to keep in mind that we stay relatively cool all year round because of where we live. And not that we don't have really hot days in the summer, but even then we're pretty well insulated. We can keep our house pretty cool. And most of the time we don't have air conditioning, but yeah, so I just never had it go bad. In fact, the last time I think I ever had oil of any kind go bad was back many years ago. Well, see, no, it wasn't even an oil that I was storing. It was an oil that shouldn't have been used with a high heat. And high heat will make oils go rancid. And you'll know because it smells and tastes terrible. And then the other time was when I was trying olive oil to make an infused oil and thought, I know what I'll do to speed up the process. I'll stick it in my greenhouse. Well, that was a dumb idea because it got too hot in the greenhouse. And when I went to check on it, I don't know how long later it was, a week, it was rancid. I could tell right off the bat it was rancid. So yeah, olive oil so some of it's going to depend on the oil, and olive oil is one of the least stable, especially the most virgin olive oil is going to be the most unstable. If it's, typically the more processed an oil is, which doesn't necessarily mean it's all bad, but the more shelf stable it is and the more heat stable it is. So coconut oil, you can get a really good refined coconut oil, which is only just very gently refined, just enough to remove the odor, the coconut smell and taste. And that's going to be more heat stable than the extra virgin coconut oil that has all that coconut aroma and flavor in it. And I use both. It just depends on what I'm using it for. One thing I find interesting is the extra virgin coconut oil, if you haven't noticed the difference and had them both, is so much softer and easier to use. So I use that one for skin cream making and the like. And then the refined is something I might use for, frying some fish that I coated in my own home milled white organic non-GMO cornmeal that I got from Azure Standard, because I just did that the other night and it was so good. It was so good. We had some cod. It was really yummy. I made oil of oregano with olive oil and it went bad on me. Yeah. And the thing is, olive oil is so good for the skin. That's why a lot of people want to go right to the olive oil when it comes to making, infused oils for the skin, because it is really good for the skin. Unfortunately, if you're wanting to infuse it in, or even just sitting on a shelf, even where it doesn't get too hot, even if that sitting too long with herbs in it, and you should only use dried herbs when it comes to oils, by the way, unless you are heating it. And even then, you definitely don't want to use olive oil. But yeah, olive oil can even go bad on a shelf. Oils that have been vacuum sealed, and then, sorry, I keep bumping the table, and then put in a place that stays relatively cool. It doesn't have to be, freezing or even refrigerator cold, just a place that doesn't get super hot. They're not going to go rancid. If they're vacuum, they're not getting air to them. So two things that cause oils to go rancid are heat and air exposure. So that's why vacuum sealing high fat foods, people say you shouldn't vacuum seal nuts, blah, 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 but it prevents them from going rancid. And yeah, so I vacuum seal all kinds of stuff, high fat foods and more, and they never go rancid unless I lose the seal somehow. and I didn't realize it, and it sat back there for too long, and then, yes, I've had nuts go rancid because of that. See, I had a kerosene jug dry rot one time, and it fell apart. Oh my gosh, just to a reminder to store your kerosene in permanent containers. Thank you for that tip. Yes, we store ours in we have kerosene isn't our favorite, but we do have some stored in we bought them in metal, what is it? Is it 50 5 gallon? 5 gallon, not 50 gallon, 5 gallon drums. We got to cut 2 or 3 of those. I don't remember how many, but it's good to have on hand. I learned this morning that moisturizing your skin will make your skin crepier and thinner. I've never heard such a thing. I guess it depends on the type of moisturizer you're using. If you're using a moisturizer from the store that's got a bunch of nasty chemicals added to it, well, yeah, certainly. But I use my skin cream on my face every single day, every single morning, and a lot of times later at night before I go to bed, sometimes in the middle of the day, my homemade skin cream all the time on my neck and on my face. So what time is it? Okay, we've been on here an hour and 15 minutes, and my throat is holding up very good. And so now it's just whatever, we can stay on here and I can answer a few more questions as long as my throat is going to hold out. I probably won't stay too much longer though. I do have things I got to get done. Let's see. But yeah, coconut, here's one thing I want to say about that skin moisturizers. Coconut oil, some people find it to be drying. Now, I use coconut oil in my skin cream, but I cannot use coconut oil on my face by itself. It is not heavy enough. I have very dry skin. And if you're using coconut oil on skin that's on older skin or skin that's already dry, I've always had dry skin anyway. But, now I'm 58. And so I don't know that it's noticed that it's any drier than it was when I was a teenager. But at any rate, you really need to mix it with something. So for me, if you haven't seen my skin cream video, I sell it, but I also have a video on how to make it yourself. I use like 2 parts of my herb infused oil, 2 parts coconut oil, 1 part shea butter. I love shea butter. And then 1 part beeswax to really, give it the consistency I want. Actually, let me restate that. On the 1 part beeswax, I usually go a little shyer than that. Otherwise, so less than 1 part. So I'll just kind of like, play it by ear, so there's less beeswax than anything else. Otherwise it can get a little bit too hard, but that just works really good for me. But you can use plain shea butter, plain mango butter. It's all going to be up to you. There's lots of great, sometimes shea butter can be a little harder, a little thicker, but this last stuff I have, I think it's the stuff I got from the Halal Everyday, which I haven't talked about much, but I love their shea butter that they get from Nigeria. It's like very, very creamy and soft. That for the most part, I could see myself using that by itself, but it's still pretty thick, but it is easier to use. I mean, use it on my hands, but just using it by itself on my face, maybe not, a little bit too rich. So I still prefer having it mixed with the infused oil, the coconut oil and such. See, crazy question. I have a huge jar of onion, garlic, both chopped small. Onion and garlic, both chopped small, infused in honey. I made it I'm guessing that's 2021, not 1021, because that'd be a long time ago. It's never been opened, no mold or odd color. Think it's still good. Yeah, I'm sure it is. I've had honey infused garlic. I usually keep mine in my fridge. I've been going through a lot of it lately, with the grandbabies, always bringing me some great gift. But I've been going through a lot of that lately, but I've had honey infused garlic sit in my refrigerator for a few years and it's still great. There's nothing wrong with it. And honey is a natural preservative. So just remember that. And, but it can darken over time though, but that doesn't mean it's bad. But you say it had no odd color, so it's fine. You could always just taste a little bit and see. Yes, I've used castor oil on my skin. I mix in with and I have videos on castor oil. I use it off and on. It's not something I prefer to use all the time. I find my skin cream, I always go back to that. Sometimes in the winter time when my skin gets drier because of the cold air outside and then the wood heat on the inside, which is very drying, I might add a little bit of castor oil either to my skin cream as I'm putting it on or put that on in between applications of the regular skin cream. So, yeah. Yeah, and rose and lavender are great for the skin too. Okay, let's see. I'm just here now, just hanging out. We already covered the topics. If you're just popping in and you were wanting the topics, that was earlier in the show. 15 minutes in is when I started talking about the off-grid cooking options. Already been there, done that, answered a few questions I had written down, and now we're just hanging. We're just chilling now, is all, until my throat finally tells me that I better stop. Heidi's skin cream is the best. So happy she still sells it. Thank you, Kay. I like it. It took me some time. I don't remember how long it took me of working with just making a recipe up and working with different things and finding that right consistency that would work, that would hold. And I love it. So, and Patrick's been using it a lot lately for his hands because, his hands have been real dry with all the stuff he's been doing outside. So, I'm like, somebody's been in my skin cream, I can tell, because I'm very particular about how I get it out of there. And there's this big divot in the middle. I'm like, I don't think I did that. And then I saw him, but it's good. I can always make more. I'm going to have to make more anyway because I'm low on the lavender skin cream. In fact, these drawers that you see back here, some of them store some of the things I already have made. Like one of these drawers, I think it's that one, has the skin cream that I've already have made up. And then I made little dividers in there so I could have like the my favorite one. The first one I came up with is the grapefruit ylang ylang frankincense with a little vanilla for added yummy smell. And then the rose geranium vanilla, and then the lavender, and then I have an unscented variety as well. So that makes it easy. I want to learn how to cook without electricity. I will have to go back. Yes. Or guess what, TM? You can go to the video that I linked to that I did a couple of years ago below the screen. That way you can see the pictures and hear just more direct. That's all I'm talking about. I'm not interacting with people or laughing or acting goofy or whatever. If you want something that's just to the point, you can go check out that video just below the video screen in the description box. You might have to click on more somewhere down here below the video screen to access that. I'm pretty sure it's in there. If it's not in there, you can always look it up on my channel. Options, what did I call it? Cooking or off-grid cooking options. I think I called it something like that. So, okay. Yeah, I've heard that about the castor oil on the eyelids for at night for cataracts. I've actually used it in my eye. Everybody says, a lot of people say, don't use it in your eye. It can get rather uncomfortable, and I don't recommend doing it often. No, I don't have a playlist just on that. I have a video where I talk about a whole bunch of different options, but I do have a preparedness playlist, and I have lots of videos on cooking off grid. I have videos that show me cooking with rocket stoves, and another video I link to down below is my off grid kitchen, and that gets used all winter long for cooking and baking and heating water and so on and so forth. And I did a little tour of it to show people how I've got it set up, because I'm always changing things up, making things a little more, accessible and easy to use in there. So I did that one last year, if you'd like to see that. So it's also linked down there if you'd like to see that. But yeah, I mean, as far as playlists, I got preparedness playlists. I got different types of preparedness playlists. Like I have the one on where Patrick and I did a lot of those videos together, where it was a preparedness tough topics for discussion that we did at the end of 2019 going into 2020. That was interesting. I have one that I mentioned earlier about my on-the-go preparedness, which is mostly about my purse, my bags, and different things like that. And I think I have one that's just food storage and preparedness. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of them out there. I remember I've been doing this for 8 years, more than 8 years now. So I've got a lot of videos. that go clear back to August of 2016. I'm not going to remember them all off the top of my head. Thumbs up for Heidi. Yes, thank you. What CS generator do you recommend? Well, Patrick makes one and sells it. That's all I've ever used. So you could always email me at raincountryhomestead@gmail.com, and I can email you a product list, and you can see what you think about that. The product list is just a list. It doesn't come with pictures unless you ask for them. But yeah, and if you go over to my Rumble channel, I have a video that shows how to use it. So, and it's in the special playlist of that name because I can't say it here. Yeah, I had to move all such videos over there and even shot a brand new one to put over there specifically on that because I just needed a refreshing anyway. And Patrick even has an old video where he shows you how to make your own, 2 different versions. And it's the one halfway through that is a simpler one that anyone could do if you don't want to buy one. So recommendations for a nasal cleaner, please. Warm water with a little pinch of salt and some baking soda. That's all I've ever used. I've never used any kind of store-bought anything. And that's about a cup of water. So I put a pinch of salt, a pinch of baking soda, or what is it? Maybe it's close to a half teaspoon. I don't think I put a teaspoon. I have a video on it, but I don't think it's on YouTube anymore either. And just, obviously dissolve them in there. And that's what I use, in the neti pot when I do that. I don't do that very often, but years ago when we were getting rid of all the medications, sometimes I forget to mention this one. I was having really bad allergies. And one of the first things I started doing was that twice a day for a while. And then I went down to once a day. And then eventually I didn't have to do it anymore. And I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe the change it made. So let's see. Any other questions? And if that thank you was to me, you are welcome. I'm not sure if that was to me or not. Oh, it was. You're welcome. Yeah, I've heard the thing about tap water and the brain. And, here's the thing. Anything you do is a risk. I mean, I personally will use rainwater or filtered rainwater when I do the rinse. But tap water is supposed to be clean. It's supposed to have all those bugs cleaned out of it. So, I mean, that's why it's got all the chlorine in there, is to kill the bugs. So if people can get some kind of bacteria from that, they can get bacteria from pretty much any water source, and distilled water in a plastic bottle isn't going to be any safer. So I'm just going to say that because I could be wrong, but just keep in mind, there's a lot of fear mongering all the way across the board. But for me personally, I do use filtered rainwater as a sinus rinse. So, and who knows that tap water that lady used, because I only heard that happening to one person once. I think it was a lady. I could be wrong. And who knows how long the tap water was sitting out. It could have collected this bacteria that got into her brain. It's the neti pot thing isn't as scary as it sounds. It's not as uncomfortable. I remember the first time I was like, I really don't want to do this. Because you think when you jump in a pool or something and the water goes up your nose and it's not like that. It's not like that. It's just very gentle. You're letting the water pour through your sinuses. You're not forcing water up into your brain. It's totally different. So it's not a scary thing. The thing I hate is I tend to get water trapped up in here. And so you got to do a lot of, no matter how much you blow or whatever. So sometimes you have to bend over and then stand back up, or bend over for a little bit, let that water kind of change positions in there. And then when you stand back up, all of a sudden the rest of it will come running out. That tends to help me quite a bit. So that's the only thing I've had an issue. But yeah, you don't want to squirt that up your nose. That's not what you do with it. I know they make ones that do that. You're better off with a neti pot. It's a lot more gentle. So anyway, yeah, salt kills germs. Oh, another thing I tend to add to it is about a tablespoon of the CS that I was talking about earlier. And that's also going to help kill bad bacteria in your sinuses and viruses, especially bacteria. So, yep, if you're worried about the water, just boil it. Just keep in mind, if it's city tap water and they fluoridate, it does condense the fluoride. And I had learned more recently, I can't remember where I saw this. Somebody also said it in a comment recently, but it was before that, it turns to fluorine. Well, fluoride is fluorine. So, but it basically what it does is it condenses it, because you're boiling the water. You might be getting the chlorine out. You might be killing more bugs, but now you're condensing the fluoride that's in there. So that's something to consider. Yeah, that's why we just don't use, like, the dogs get rainwater, the chickens get rainwater. We only consume our filtered rainwater. And then we use the city, even though they don't fluoridate anymore, thankfully, we still just save the city tap water for everything else, for cleaning, washing dishes, washing clothes, and so on and so forth. Anyway, oh, hi, Deb. I'm actually just getting ready to close out. I've been here for an hour and a half. Woohoo. And I made it without breaking down into a massive coughing fit, which is really, really nice. I had some backup. Like, I have this echinacea elderberry tincture in a spray bottle, which, because it's got high proof alcohol in it, I can spray the back of my throat, and it kind of helps numb it, so that if it starts to itch like that, let's talk on vocal cords. By the way, I was told years ago when I was trying to figure out what is going on with, because I used to sing all the time, and it was getting harder and harder to sing. I'm like, what is wrong with? So I finally went to the ears, nose, throat doctor in the next town over, and he looked in there. It's like, oh, you got nodules. You could just sound like Rod Stewart for the rest of your life, or you can get surgery. I'm like, I'll just live with it. I pretty much had to just give up singing, which was sad because it was a big, huge part of my life. But at any rate, I can still teach most days. But doing it, I'm surprised I made it this long, and my vocal cords are still holding up. Last week, they were just far more trash, because all that, already having that cold, and then the coughing put more stress on them. And then by the time I got, almost an hour into my show, and then I started coughing because it itchy. I noticed later, somebody in the comments was like, no, you're not supposed to prevent a cough. It's like, no, you don't understand. There's a difference between a productive cough. That's when you're working mucus up out of your lungs. Yes, you want to do that. But if you got an itchy throat because you have swollen nodules, that's something totally different. And if you want to be able to talk or get rid of the itch, you got to do something about it. So I wasn't trying to stop a productive cough. I was stopping a dry, itchy, unproductive cough. So no, there's always a difference. No, not thyroid nodules, vocal cord. So it's from many years of singing and teaching. So I've been a singer most of my life. I started teaching dance and martial arts. Well, dance, I actually started teaching when I was a teenager. And then when I came to this town at 22, I was 23 when I started my own dance classes here. And then later, after I had my boys and we got our black belts, we started teaching our own martial arts classes here. So I've always been teaching something. So that means I'm always using my vocal cords, and then the singing as well, because I've been in many different types of choirs. I've been in a cappella choirs. In high school alone, my senior year, I was at the church. I was in 2 singing groups. Was it 2? Yeah, 2 singing groups at church. And then in high school, I was in, my senior year, 1, chamber singers, bel canto, and jazz choir. I was in 4 choir, a couple of them you had to try out for, like the jazz choir, the bel canto, and the a cappella choir. I can't remember what we called ourselves. But yeah, and then going practically right into teaching and constantly having to use my vocal cords, and homeschooling my boys too. So that meant my vocal cords have been beat to heck and gone. I mean, they are, and I'm still teaching. I'm still using my vocal cords. So some days are a lot more rough than others. And I can't promise on my live shows, especially if I'm shooting videos earlier beforehand, I can't promise I can make it a whole hour. Like that interview I did with Luke, that we talked for over 2 hours. I couldn't believe I made it through the whole thing. Didn't cough one time, and my throat didn't itch. And, I thank the Lord for that one, that I was able to make it through that long. But I can feel them warming up. They're going to start itching anytime. So I'm should probably get off here so you don't have to see that ugly mess like you saw last week. And I already have by the way, before I go, I already have my live show theme for next week. So if you're coming in here kind of late, just so you know, I start the 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's my time, is when I start the topic. But I like to turn the camera on and, get it going 15 minutes early. That means more people might be apt to get a notification and be able to get in here by noon. And then at that time, again, that's my time, Pacific Standard Time. I start talking about the specific topics that I'm choosing. So if you're ever doing a replay and you don't want to hear all the opening, whatever, you can always skip ahead 15 minutes in, and that's when you'll hear me start talking about that. And then I spend the rest of the time answering either questions that have come in through the week or questions that come in on the chat. So anyway, next week, episode number 4, I will be talking about food preservation options. And of course, I have a lot of videos on that too. But it's always fun to talk about them in live shows as well. Sometimes I think to say things that I forgot to say in some of my other videos. So anyway, there's that. And then also middle of the week, you'll see a clip that might be around 10 minutes-ish published from one of the previous live shows where I just took the meat of the information, added some photos, did some editing, and then, for those people who want something that's a little more to the point and not long and drawn out and, talking back and forth in the chat. So that way everybody can that follows me can at least get something that will suit them. So yes, I do need to get going. Yes, Patriot Nurse is great. I've been following her for many, many years. I always wonder how many people know her real name. I notice nobody ever says it. I happen to know, not because I've ever talked to her, but because she was on a show many years ago and went by her real name. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Anyway, so I'm assuming she doesn't really want it public on YouTube, so I'm not going to say it. I do need to get going, and I got to, at least now the dogs are being quiet. I need to go finish editing a video I'm working on, one of Patrick's. Something he got, another thing he got that he's got to work on to build up for our off-grid property. And yeah, so I'm actually, by the way, I keep saying I gotta go, but I'm actually several weeks out on my Wednesday videos because all the videos you're seeing publishing on Wednesday are either going to be Patrick's videos, which were typical, or they're my remastered videos, either mine or Patrick's that were from 2016 and 2017, where I decided I just wanted to make them look nicer, sound nicer, and add more information and without having to reshoot them all. And so I'm out and clear into almost the end of January with those videos. And when I finish this one I'm working on for his last one that I'm working on, I get to be out to the end, right at the end of January. I think it'll be the last Wednesday in January. So for Wednesday videos, I'm covered for a long time. Just not all of them. I'm about 2 weeks ahead on everything else. And then the Monday videos, I shoot those a few days on a Wednesday before now. So they're, yeah. Anyway, yes, thank you, everyone. I should get going, and lots of fun. Love being in here with you guys. It is so fun to be able to just do this and watch for those other videos coming out, or look in the description box down below for more detailed videos that I had mentioned. And we'll see you next week. And then I got to click on the end stream button, and hopefully it ends. Did it end?